DarkHour Paranormal. I am your host, Michael. And tonight, folks, I want to thank you for coming by and enjoying some of these later shows that we put on in way of circumstance. But I'll tell you what, they are working out. We have lots of people inquiring and coming by even after the show's aired, watching. So I want to thank all of you for support on that end. Now, tonight, I have with me a fellow panel member of Black Lotus and Kimberly O'Connor. Share her experiences with extraterrestrial abduction, and of course, there is a bit of sourness at the middle of this piece of sweet candy in way of topics. Folks, we're going to be diving in quite deep to some of her experiences and how this may have impacted her throughout her life. And of course, family is at the forefront. Now, this is certainly by no means a light topic of conversation, and I don't want anybody to hold back in the chat. If you have questions, put them in capital letters and we will get right to them. It's important, I think, that we discuss this topic because as much as it's easy to glaze and just breeze over some of these stories that people bring forth, these experiences that are beyond extraordinary, we need to stay grounded and realize that this is happening to some people. It may not mirror our own experience, but the truth of the matter is there is somebody out there who is having one that they describe, having an experience that they describe exactly the way that it happened. So I wanted to bring Kimberly on tonight, and honestly, this is my fault. I should have brought her on sooner. I know we've gotten busy over the last 6-8 months here at DarkHour Paranormal, and even though we've taken a little time to enjoy the family and the holiday, by the way, Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, and of course, Happy New Year. We are approaching that quite quickly. To all of you, I wish this joyous celebration, but we are back on track, folks, and we are going to have a fantastic show tonight. So, without further ado, as we love to say here on YouTube, Kimberly O'Connor, I want to thank you for joining us tonight. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you for having me, Michael. I appreciate that.
No, the pleasure is all mine. Again, I really should have had you on sooner. I don't remember. I may have even asked you at one point or proposed the idea, and then, through the shuffle, please don't take it personally. You, along with many others,
Absolutely
I
not.
have tried to funnel in and eventually get to everybody. But listen, I'm really excited that you're here with us tonight. And of course, you are part of the Black Lotus panel. Can you tell us just very briefly how you got involved with Damien and Ralph, awesome hosts over there at Black Lotus Productions? If you guys are not familiar, go and check them out. Of course, I am also on the panel, and we have a great discussion every Sunday at 8 o'clock Eastern Time, and I believe you guys are now going on Thursday. Just don't know the time. Maybe you can fill us in a little bit.
Same time. As on Sundays. But me and Damien had known each other for probably about 2 years or so before.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and he said that him and Ralphie had been talking about bringing another person on, and they said that they couldn't think of anybody else to that would be fitting but me. So I was honored and humbled at the point of taking it.
I think this is curious, too, because when your name came up, I was already part of the panel, of course, and Keith Anthony Blanchard, I believe, was there as well. And Damien had proposed this. He said, I like this woman. I'd like to bring her on. What do you guys think? And, one of the first things that came to mind for me was the absence of a woman's voice in many corners of these fields and topics that we talk about. Being a woman in the field of, let's say, ufology, to a certain degree because of your experiences, but certainly the paranormal, and you have many other extenuating interests. What are your thoughts on having this voice as a woman, and should we be looking more towards women when it comes to talking about these experiences?
Well, first of all, it was humbling because, yes, it's very difficult as a woman in these paranormal fields. Not so much going on doing case files like to haunted places. That's kind of a norm for a woman anymore, but not so much in the position of what I've been given. And I appreciate that. And at first I thought it was going to be a struggle because it was actually my first time doing. I mean, I had done interviews before, but first time being amongst everybody, people, and I'm like, wow, how is this going to work out? But me and you talked about that before, but
Indeed. Indeed.
but it turned out to be a wonderful thing. I look forward to it every Sunday.
It is a good time. We have some great guests that come by, and one of the interesting things about the format at Black Lotus is that they don't bring this person on if we have a guest and highlight them specifically. They are now part of a panel discussion that we are having that evening, so they're on equal ground with everybody. So it's very cool what Ralph and Damien have created over there on Black Lotus, and again, I implore you guys to check it out. Now, let's get into you a little bit here. Let's talk about how your interest in anything supernatural, paranormal, extraterrestrial related came about. Now, did many people have some sort of event occur to them at an early age? Do you fall into that category, or were you more in the latter part of your life?
No, I seen my first, and it was like a robot being at the age of between 3 and 4. I was the only one. I mean, I was the only kid being brought up by these two people, and I don't know how they didn't see it, other than the simple fact, a paralyzed or whatever, as they would have been facing it because I was right behind them, and it was just, it was something that I never forgot, but yet never spoke about either.
What did this, you said it was a robot-like being, correct? I imagine that's at least within the visual characteristics. Did it behave the same way as something mechanical? Did it make a sound to you? And at the same time, was this something sort of fleeting within a vision, or did you actually have some sustained perception?
I was just frozen, taking in exactly what it looked like, knowing that I had never seen anything like that before. And we're talking about, this was early 60s. So I had no idea of what a robot was until later on, when toys like that started coming out. And that's when it sparked that memory back again, that I had already seen something like that looking in the window. But again, I learned that also at a very early age, to learn how to not say anything, because me being able to speak and to see spirits, but yet I thought everybody else could see them as well. I thought that was a norm until I was approached by my stepfather and my mother that if I didn't stop talking about this, that they were going to take me to a head doctor or a psychiatrist. And even then, I didn't know what the hell that was at 8 years old.
Right.
Because that's when I moved back with her.
Well, at that age, you have so little to build on. And of course, it's very difficult to take in everything that's happening around you, especially when adults are making the decisions and you're just simply relaying an experience.
Right.
Was this the only time that you saw this robot, and did it try to interact with you or connect with you in a way that made you feel like it was monitoring you, or what did you get in overall sense, if you have the withal to recall? Of course, we're limited at that age. Why do you think it was there? Was it there for you, or did you just stumble upon this?
I have no idea, but it was like it just stood there looking in. It didn't make any movements after that, and I don't even recall it leaving, but I do remember like locking eyes onto it, and I'm a very detailed person, so I'm kind of like taking in what it looks like even at that age.
Right.
But for some reason, like I said, I'd never seen another robot after that. As far as a being, no.
Okay. So you're 9 years old, and you're telling this to your parents, and they're saying, "Hey,
no,
listen."
I wasn't telling them nothing like that. No, it's just that she had heard either from my sisters or heard me talking to somebody that was not there, that they could not see. And apparently I had done this several times and was unaware that somebody else was listening, or just like I said, I just assumed that everybody could see the same thing I could.
Right.
And that's when fair. I started shutting down.
Yeah, usually, it's funny, the moment that we start opening up is the moment we start shutting down, because as we start to discover ourselves at that age, we come into our adolescence in many different ways, of course, psychically as well as physically. The society is there to shunt all of that exploration down, and basically fits you into a certain mold, pattern, way of thinking and being, really, essentially. Just really kind of interesting how that works. So okay, so you're at this age, your parents have overheard you talk about this, they approach you, say, you got to stop talking about these sort of things. What was the next experience you had that you might deem extraterrestrial, or, I mean, did the paranormal end of this sort of continue on? At what point did it change into extraterrestrial presence, if you will?
Well, at the age of 10, I seen, I was able to, like I said, communicate yet, but I still shut down a hell of a lot. At the age of like, he was either 10 or 11, we had a friend whose bar was actually 1 block away. My mother was working there at the time, and he committed suicide. Now, mind you, this man was very nice to us, especially me, because of the situation. Let's just say that my home life that I was going through. Um, I knew that he was dead before the phone call got to our house, because we went back then. Everybody went to bed early because you had to get up for school early. So we're still going to bed during daylight.
Mm-hmm.
And he stood at the end of my bed, and I knew, but at that point, I'm starting to put the sheet over my head and start to shut down, because I know that if I start seeing him again, or start seeing this and all of these things start happening, like the talking and communication, I'm going to be in trouble again. So this happened
Right.
for a month. He came for a month at the end of my bed and just stood there. He never spoke. He just stood there and looked at me.
So it doesn't sound like he immediately crossed over into the next overtone where you're going into that light.
No,
Maybe it
they
sounds
don't
like he
usually
stuck
do that
around.
anyhow. Yeah.
Interesting. It's curious, and it just very quickly jogged my memory. When my grandfather was passing away, prior to this, he had come to me and was never very expressive in certain ways with me, but point blank asked me, what's going to happen to me when I die? And the way it was said, I was put back a bit because it sounded like he already assumed that I had the answer. So I talked to him at length about what I thought it was going to be, and he very well took it in, I should say. And at the end, I said, if you have any problems, just come to me. And he said, well, what do you mean, like after I already die? I say, yeah, before or after, and I kind of said it lightly, but I did mean it.
Hmm.
And so, sometime later, I think it was 3 or 4 months later, he's in the hospital. I visited him for the last time, and I reminded him, I was like, mean anything, just, come on over to me. He's like, okay. And I thought it was kind of weird that he just sort of agreed. He was a very religious man, I think, in his own way. And of course, I'm very much the opposite, but can express in certain ways. So, long story short, about a week after he had passed, I was laying in bed one night, and all of a sudden I started feeling this very large energy come into my room, and I saw him in my third eye. And even though we've had our experiences, it scared the hell out of me because of how enormous his energy was. It felt like the room itself was vibrating, and I kind of said, okay, hold on, and asked him to step back, and he's like, no, I'm not here to ask you for anything. I'm just here to say, hi or goodbye, whatever you want to look at it. And then he was gone. But we have these experiences, perhaps, for somebody out there who's had one compartmentalized experience, it's something they'll sit and think about for their entire life, never having an answer or arriving even close to some sort of conclusion about what they went through. And yet you have somebody like yourself, Kim, who already by the age of 10 have had two incredible, significant accounts with something you can't explain. So from 10 years old going forward, do you feel, all right, before I go down that track, do you feel that throughout your time interacting with these other species and or the paranormal, that your clairvoyance has been heightened as a result of that contact? Or do you feel that perhaps your experiences don't have anything to do with your progression in way of clairvoyance. Is there any correlation?
I believe there is. Even though I always kind of knew that I was a kid of curiosity. I always looked
Hmm.
up to the sky, knew there had to be more than what we're experiencing and can see with our eyes right now. There had to be more. There's too
Hmm.
much out there for this little area to be the only thing with life. So I was a curious kid, asked a hell of a lot of questions, and even basically took it to school in sixth grade doing my science project, which is a book report, oral book report, which I am not good at speaking.
You're
but
fooling
at the
me.
end, but at the end of the book report, I'll never forget this, and I really hate that I don't have it anymore. That we would be fools to think that we were the only beings of all these stars and planets out here. We would be
Hmm.
fools to believe that we were alone. And at that point, the class was silent. The teacher told me, "Hold on." Went out, got another teacher, and then made me reread the damn thing.
Hmm.
So I knew at that point, I knew that that was an important step or an important sentence or two that I spoke, and I never forgot it. Uh, I believe that I've always had a sense of knowing things, but always discouraged because I didn't have more trust in myself, more belief in myself that I
Right.
could actually do that. And it wasn't until a lot of time later did I accept it.
Well, that's something I think the majority of us go through. I mean, right now, specifically within this era, even taking in, from the 1960s moving forward, it's all about
Right.
understanding, these really small nuances about your character, about who you are, and, just this whole internal exploration with so many different facets. It comes to me as no surprise that, this is something that you also experienced a little bit later on, as I did myself. Um, let's talk about when things started to really ramp up for you in way of this contact with extraterrestrials specifically. Can you tell us about the first time that you felt convinced that you had been either visited, abducted, or interacted with an extraterrestrial race?
Well, I'm going to tell you that at the age of 14 or 15 is when I seen my first craft.
Okay.
And to me, that was like the mothership because it looked to be like two football fields long or
Oh,
wide.
wow.
With the one, it was chrome with, it looked like it was shiny chrome with the windows that wrapped all the way around it. I took it like, again, I couldn't take my eyes off of it, and I took in as
Hmm.
much detail on it as I could because, again, this is something that's going to be important later on, and sure enough, it was. Um, as far as the first time that I was taken, I just remember the first time that I started, or not the first time, but around my early 20s to when things started going bad for me, losing babies and that. I know that in my late teens, I was taken to the female doctor and was checked and everything, and was asked why I had so much scar tissue on my cervix.
Hmm.
I don't know.
What?
I don't know. I'm up here. That thing's down there. I have no idea.
I mean, at 16 years old, I'd be surprised if you had an answer, and of course, there would be many questions that would follow that answer. But okay, so
Not
you
that kind of
felt,
damage.
yeah, well, well, I mean, the thing is here too that I'm not aware of any medical condition that would produce such results. Now, of course, I'm ignorant in respect to that medical field by and large. I mean, it is such a vast field. If somebody
Right.
is privy to that, please let me know what you're thinking there. But uh, let's get into this a little bit because this part of your story is what's really intriguing and specific, I think, in way of what we need to pay attention to. So we've heard many times that there are abductions that people would experience some sort of extraction in way of their sexual organs or at least with infertility in mind. Do you feel that this is what was happening to you at that age, and as you've gotten older and gone through these other experiences, do you have any recollection going back to that time where you have more clarity on what might have happened to you?
In my teens, no, I would have had absolutely not an inkling that any of that was going on. Um, it wasn't until like my early 20s, I lost. I would go to the hospital or the doctor's office, be checked, yes, you're pregnant. You're 2.5, 3.5 months, and not long after, I have nothing. There's no sign of me even being pregnant, ever being pregnant, even though I'm bleeding. Like I felt like I was bleeding out.
Okay. I have a big question on that one. Mysteria Dragonheart, very quickly, thank you so much for your $3 super chat. I wanted to acknowledge the super sticker. Thank you so much for your continuing support here on Dark Hour Paranormal. And very quickly, the Bridgewater Triangle Paranormal Investigators, I think I might have reached out to you guys, if I'm not mistaken. I'd like to talk to you, not only about perhaps what you're speaking of here, but I have a documentary in the works, and of course I'd love to have you guys on the show about the Bridgewater Triangle. So if you can shoot me an email at darkhourparanormallive@gmail.com, I would much appreciate it and look forward to speaking with you. Again, that is in the description if you need to see it. Okay, so you were pregnant and then all of a sudden this disappears and you go into your doctor, your primary care doctor, and what is the medical field saying about this?
There's absolutely. He said, I have nothing. There's no sign of ever being pregnant. There's no anything. But yet I was bleeding.
Did you have, how far along in this pregnancy were you, if I may ask?
It was either 2.5 months to 3.5 months, because I had just had the testing done.
Okay.
So he knew that I had been there prior.
Yep.
But now there was no sign.
So they confirmed, and I'm going to be kind of specific on this because this is what people get going in way of thinking. They confirmed through maybe blood tests or hormones or whatever they may do that you were indeed pregnant at that time. And
yes,
through that, is there any possibility that there could have been a false reading?
not that I would know. No. I mean, I did a home pregnancy test at the time, and I also went to the OB/GYN, and that's where they tested me as well. Well, they did blood work, so.
Okay. So this happens wherein, they check you out and there's no sign of you being pregnant. I mean, of course they're at a loss as much as you are, but is there anything that they could give you in way of explanation? Could they have said possibly that you may have had some sort of miscarriage and maybe was not aware of it? I mean, we've heard of something like that happening. And of course, I'm covering all these bases just to appeal to that left-brained. So, I mean, I appreciate you very much entertaining this and going through this with us. Yeah, any detail on, where the doctors may have gone after that, or did they just throw their hands in the air and say, we just don't know, have a nice day?
That's exactly what it is.
Wow.
That was exactly it. They just threw he just threw his hand up because I don't know what to tell you. I mean, I started at one end of the table. He had me all the way to the top of the table trying to feel around, see if there was anything or whatever. There was nothing. And literally he did like you did, threw his hands up. He goes, you don't even have a sign of being pregnant.
Okay. Now, was this the only time that you had that type of experience?
No, it happened at least one other time before, but I've only been shown one child.
Oh, so you've been shown offspring?
Yes. Yeah, one.
Can you tell
at least
us a little
one.
bit about that? Yeah.
Sure. I was. I remember being on the craft, and there was like 3 or 4 other beings there, alien beings, and all of a sudden they walked this little girl in, and either they advance in age a lot more rapidly than we do. I'm not sure how that works, but they brought her in, and it was just like I knew that was my daughter, and that the hug went on, and but that was it. there was like no other kind of communication, and I've yet to see her again that I remember. At least I don't have recall of other than that first time.
Was the interaction something more automatic, sort of intuitively driven, or was there a lot of emotion and processing going on for you at that time?
I didn't know why I was there
Mm-hmm.
until they brought her in, and then it was evident why I was there. They were
Mm-hmm.
showing me basically, this is part of you.
And what did these beings look like physically?
Okay, a lot of at first I thought they were like the Greys, but in the same sense, I've seen Arcturians, and I want to say that they're like a mix of between the Arcturians and the Tall Greys.
Hmm.
I didn't have bad experience with them. They don't have the exact same features as the Greys do. And I realized that there's three different species of Greys as well.
Yeah, at least there's. I could certainly sit here and say that there are multiple species that have been
Yeah, and there could
observed.
be.
Yeah, and I'm sure as time goes on, we'll be able to classify these a little bit more. I think there are some classification systems already proposed in way of what might be out there in respect to the different species. So, at any point, did you feel like this might have been the natural course that you were to take? So, what I mean by that, in other words, that we're going to go into the realm of something a little bit more intangible here, folks, but just playing this out a little bit, maybe something contractual with you in this life working with this species, or do you feel like this was something that might have been introduced or even put forward in an invasive sense here in your life after you've incarnated?
I really believe that this is why we're here, is to help repopulate. Is that at least that's the uh, what I've been given as far as information, not verbally, but through telepathic. This is why we're here to repopulate the Earth and help repopulate other planets and stars too, because they don't have the sexual organs like they did before.
Now, is that something you observed or something that you'd learned through your research?
I believe a little bit of both,
Okay.
and but through my own thought, I believe that the reason that this may have occurred is because of all the nuclear weaponry and things that they use to start with may have malformed them, or um, how do you want to say it? Through all of the different battles and things that they go through or whatever with the nuclear power,
Mm-hmm.
being it testing or whatnot. I believe that they lost a lot of different things, and sexual organs and uh, the sexual being of them is gone. And I believe that's why they can't reproduce. And they need our help by also introducing their own DNA into our, eggs and sperm or whatever.
That's curious. I've often heard this particular concept in way of our history and perhaps our immediate history of our universe. To kind of piggyback on what you're saying there, I understand that at some point, those that are known as the Greys, during their evolution, if you will, opted to cut out the intuitive side of themselves, the right-brained interpretation, the psychic energy, which is synonymous with sexual energy. Your sexual energy is your psychic energy. And I'd like to
Emotions
actually
as
do it.
well.
Yes, and that goes right in line with the
Hmm.
emotions as well. If you don't have that right brain interpretation, you're emotionless. So,
Hmm.
long ago they adopted this way of being much more mechanical, and again, in theory, that's the line of evolution that they followed, and they didn't have a use for their sexual organs anymore. So yeah, they shriveled up and disappeared. They were basically bred out of their species, and they are solely supported by artificial insemination and incubation. This is how, again, this is what I've heard, this is how their species is born on a normal sense. They don't go in any biological fashion. Um, very, very, very curious to look into that history. And I think Maura Kuan Yin, fantastic author who has written quite a bit with Barbara Han Clow on this subject in way of, again, of channeling. I think it was Ra that she claimed to channel, and they talk about the history of our universe at length, how much the civilizations on Venus, Mars, and other celestial bodies at one point in time had mirrored what we were doing here, but there were some slight discrepancies in way of the life that we had lived. Something we can definitely get into. Now, today, when you think about this little girl that had been introduced to you, do you still feel that strong motherly connection? And is there any sort of conversation that or connection that happens with you telepathically, either just feeling her energy out there somewhere in the universe, or something more specific and intimate?
I want to say no, and it's going to sound cold as hell, but I just because it's been such a long time that I just don't. I mean, I want to know what she looks like. I want to know what she's doing and what part she plays in this whole scenario.
Mm-hmm.
But I guess what I'm saying when I say cold, it means that I understand she has a mission or an agenda. And being a hybrid, I think that that's how they're going to regain a more stronger DNA
Mm-hmm.
to rebuild their own species back again. I believe that's the whole purpose of the whole hybrid issue.
Did you ever get a sense that these beings were looking at us or at you more as parental figures, in way of what their position was, or did it feel more clinical, their presence in your experiences?
That's interesting because I really never thought about that.
Hmm.
I didn't. I don't. I didn't. I don't think I've ever felt that it was clinical. I didn't. But I took it as more of a personal
Mm-hmm.
because of what I was allowed to do on the crafts,
What were
and
you allowed to do?
that's part of what I kept a secret for a long time. And what I was allowed to do was to be able to sit amongst the crew at the control panel and being able to watch everything go by so super fast. I took that as being something special. I never thought that anybody would ever, be able to do that, and yet I've never read anything. And it wasn't until about I want to say about it's been some time since, but when I first came out with my story and told it, uh, a guy from Ireland contacted me, and I had never shared that aspect of my story yet. And he goes, I have a similar story just like yours. And I said, really?
Hmm.
And we got to talking. And I said, but there's an aspect that I never shared with anybody. He goes, me too. He goes, not even with my closest friends or family. I said, yeah, me too. And without saying a word to each other, we both texted almost the same exact words simultaneously at the same time and sent it. And we were blown away. Even we still talk about it. That we were both allowed to sit at the control panels with the crew as as part of the unit.
Do you think that? Well, first
I
I would
got
ask you.
goosebumps.
Reliving this, the energy
Yeah.
is certainly here. The first question I'd like to ask you is, why do you think that you are allowed to do this? And the second question I'll follow that with is, before I go into the physical aspects of the control panel itself, do you feel that sitting amongst the crew, you were part of that family? That perhaps they were showing you that you were part of what they were doing, who they were as well, even though you were in this other body and perhaps living a different type of life?
Exactly, because I didn't feel that they were strangers. I was very comfortable.
It was familiar. Tina Mobley, thank you so much for your $5 super chat there. I'm sorry, we get very deep into these conversations, but I do get to the super chats, and I always thank you guys. She says, Michael, my dear friend, I'm wishing you the best 2022, full of love and light. I hope it's filled with positive people, places, and more knowledge to learn. Thank you so much, and my friend, it will be. Very quickly, Tina does some fantastic jewelry, folks. This is one that she sent me. You can't really see it very
Awesome.
well. There we go. It's got organite and gold flakes and a bunch of wonderful semi-precious stones. It's also charged. And, of course, you see the DarkHour Paranormal emblem on there. That's pretty cool. And in addition, she did send me an Orgone pyramid. This is pretty neat, too. And laid with copper wire and, once again, charged. Has DHP for the personality effect there, personal touch. And thank you so much, Tina Mobley. If you guys are interested, go and check out her wares down in the description below. There is a link to her shop. Now, has this type of experience carried out from the beginning to where you are now? Are you still experiencing any sort of abductions or interactions, whether it be through dream or physically, with these particular beings?
Yeah, I think my last interaction was just last year at this very time. I was at a friend's house. I stayed there for about 3 months with him in Pennsylvania, and I sleep in one position only. I sleep on my left side, and that's it. I woke up at 3 o'clock in the morning, and it was like I sat down on the bed and just laid back. That's how I woke up. That's not me. And we were constantly seeing UFOs just about the whole entire time that we were there. Pennsylvania is a hot spot.
I've heard that. And I meant to ask you before, when you saw that UFO that you described to us that was about 2 football fields in length, what shape was this? Was this like your traditional Tic Tac? Did it look like a TR-3B with a triangular shape? Was it circular?
It was the old skip. Yep, circular.
Okay, very curious. I mean, we see so many different shapes. I always like to sort of identify and then, whisk off one way or another to a certain category of, sightings that have been corroborated at least. And I meant to ask you...
And that was the sorry, hon. That was in the mid-'70s. And again, like I said, I took in as much detail about the craft that I could. And what I noticed was there was no place... I mean, it was completely chromed out, like really super shiny. There was no place for landing gear to drop down. I did notice that, if this thing... And I don't know why in the hell that it's just now coming to me. But I know that for some reason I took that much to take in detail, like if this thing was to land, there's no legs like an airplane has, the wheels and everything. There's nothing to land on. There was no place at all. It was completely smooth and shiny.
But how long did you see it for?
Oh, it was about... I didn't take my eyes off of it for about... It was brief, but it was enough time to take in all the details because I turned my head quick enough just to yell out a friend's name that lived with us. I turned back around and it was completely gone. There was no sound. There was no smoke or, exhaust, nothing like that.
Interesting. And, I would assume that you had enough time if you sustained that vision to, sort of make other deductions rather than the first startled appearance of, just identifying the shape within yourself. Now you're thinking peripherally about what you're seeing. So that's pretty interesting to me. And not to be jumping around here, and I apologize for this.
You're fine, I'm sorry.
Can you explain or describe what the control panel that you sat in front of looked like? Did you have any idea of how it was operating? Were you allowed to touch anything?
You know what? I can't remember. I honestly, because I was so fixated on looking outside the window and seeing everything go by really fast. It reminded me of like Star Wars, how everything's going like, warp speed or whatever. But as far as actually remembering any detail of the panel, no, I can't.
Interesting.
I wish I could. I did, for some reason, I don't know why I didn't take more time to look at that, but I was just, like I said, asphyxiated on looking out because I always loved that.
What do you... so many people that I've spoken to who believe they've been brought aboard some sort of alien craft have expressed that not only did it have a mechanical component to it, but it also had a biological element, almost like the craft itself was alive or that the inhabitants were somehow biologically or psychically connected to the craft. Did you get any sense of that at all?
I didn't take that in on. I
Mm-hmm.
really didn't. I really can't say. I know that what I did think was strange was I had two of the beings to my left and one to my right. I was in the middle of them. I know that everything was just, they were straight ahead or looking down at the panel. Everything was, so I guess it would be like mechanical in a sense, you would say. But there was no, hey, how you doing, or anything like that. There was nothing like that. Everything was, basically they knew their job, they're doing it. But
KM
I
would like.
never,
Yep. So go ahead.
never did I feel that I was not part of them. I was made welcome. And like I said, the guy from Ireland, he said the exact same thing and believes that we were probably on the same craft at the same time, even though I'd never seen another human the times that I was there except for once.
And I'd like to get into that particular aspect of your experience in just a moment. KM has a question. She says, "Does Kim have any scars? Do you have any scars from this experience, or any physical anomalies that you can put forth and say, I don't know how this got here?"
It wasn't until I was talking to a super soldier friend of mine about a month ago, and he said he knew that I had already been taken, that I was part of everything. He goes, now look between on your left knee, between your left knee and your left ankle, on the inside. He goes, you have a indentation. I never paid no mind, and sure enough, I do.
Very
He goes,
curious.
the women have it on the left, the men have it on the right.
Oh, well, that's curious.
Yeah, I'd never heard anything about that before.
Do you think you've ever had an implant or anything like that you've identified, or have something within your body that doesn't seem like it belongs there?
I don't, that I can't really say because I don't know, so I don't want to imply that I do. I know that a lot of us that have been taken have a lot of migraines, a lot of sinus issues, have problems with our ears. I have all of that as well, but I always have.
Very, very interesting. Do you
Yeah.
think that overall these experiences have been negative, more benign, or positive for you?
For me, it was an eye opener. It actually answered the questions I always had. Or just like I said, I always knew as a child that there had to have been more things than what we're seeing here, and that was just confirming everything. It's what I say is that it's, in a sense, it's not scary to me, but it's exhilarating, and it's fantastic in a sense. I feel bad because I realize that maybe if I remembered or had recall of my examinations like many others do that had bad experiences, maybe I wouldn't say that I had good experiences then. I feel bad because they did have that recall, that bad experience, instead of something good that they could take from it.
Tell me a little bit about the one time that you saw another human being amongst these other entities.
It was somebody very close that I would have not wanted to be there. That's all I really want to say on that, without getting more detailed.
Yeah, no, that's fine. You don't have to go into
Okay.
detail about that. Let me ask you this, though. Did it seem out of place that there was another human being aboard this craft while you were there?
It was the first time that I had ever seen one. It was the first time I'd ever seen another human being. All the other times had been ETs.
Interesting. All right. Well, Off-World Adam here has a quick question. He says, do you think women as life bringers are more targeted by entities? And I'm not going to assume, but I'm going to put forth that you either mean paranormal entities or you are speaking about extraterrestrials. I think the conversation can go two different ways considering which way we'll go.
Right.
For the time being, Off-World, unless you can clarify for me, let's go with the less obvious here. Let's say paranormal entities.
women aren't the only ones taken. There are plenty men that have been taken and had things extracted from them as well.
And of course, women as life bringers, as you mentioned here, off world,
Hmm.
there's so much in the way of implication. I mean, if you are, if you have a body that can grow a physical life, I mean, you are that portal into life. And women, that's what they are. They are the crossover. They are the in between of what we certainly don't understand wave of etherics and the physical world that we at least convince ourselves that we understand. Obviously being the ones who can create and bring life into this world.
But it takes a male as well as a female to make a creation.
Certainly, and I'll actually expound a little bit and say that it takes a male energy, because
Hmm.
if these species are creating things artificially, we understand artificial insemination will yield a
Hmm.
certain pregnancy or result, and yet it did come from a man, or it's now encased as male energy in way of the biology how this is created. The body doesn't really know the difference as long as it's administered correctly in the way that it should be. So it's very curious to think about whether or not some of these species are really taking us for that particular function, because it's been stated, and I certainly can't back this up, folks, but it's been stated within my research. I have found that there are some who believe that our prime focus in way of dealing with these other extraterrestrials or other species, we are in a body that these other species could only hope for. And the reason for that is because this particular body has the ability to encompass and contain what is understood as Christ energy, or Christ consciousness. And essentially that means you can live multidimensionally and yet still exist in a physical form. And again, my understanding is that some of these other bodies, maybe through their evolution like the Greys, they just don't have the capacity to reach that type of awareness within the God field, if you will, for a lack of a better term here. So when we look at the specifics when it comes to these abductions, certainly women will be very favorable, I think, for some of these. I don't want to keep saying abductions, but undertakings, because we really don't know. Again, if there's a consensus somewhere on some level, we also understood that the concept that's been proposed to us is that we don't have anything happen to us unless we give permission on some level. But what does that actually mean? Usually it's you and I, Kim, sitting here saying, hey, can I do this? You say, yeah, sure, you can do that. You gave consent. But
Right.
if there was something that we did in a spiritual sense, perhaps, we see this in the big dramatic play of life, wherein you have an aggressor and you have a victim. And you say, oh my God, why did that happen to the victim? Maybe, and again, we talk about this, that's the way it was set up. Because next time around, the person who was the victim will play the aggressor, and they'll get to see and experience that part of everything, and
That's right.
go through the motions. So it's reciprocal. I think the universe itself is very reciprocal, and what we're doing on a grander scale with some of these extraterrestrials may mirror these esoteric principles that we talk about in way of just incarnation and living life. Did you have any sense, being aboard these vessels or having interactions, that they were trying to give you any sort of message that they would like you to impart on the Earth's population at large? Do you feel that you are some sort of carrier of information, or do you think that your experiences are pretty much very personal and it's your decision to share them?
No, I think we talked about this a couple times too. I get information fed to me basically from outside source, and that's how. And again, with my writing, I pass that on through, as well as I've gave messages and readings for others as well. Um, I do believe that we have that. Uh, I don't want to say uh, obligation instead of ability,
Hmm.
obligation
Hmm.
to pass on that information. That any information that we give is not for only us; it's for everyone. Not everyone are able to communicate and listen. and understand, to pass on, to gather that information. Whether people listen or not, that's totally, again, up to them. It's by choice.
I had a question, and it just slipped my mind. It'll come back.
I'm
Don't worry.
sorry.
Nope, it had nothing to do with you. It just slipped my mind. It'll come back around. Is it your opinion that the beings that you interacted with, perhaps this is where we are headed in way of our own evolution? Did you see elements of the telekinesis, or perhaps some sort of moving of objects with their minds, or some sort of easy way of moving about their material universe? And again, do you think this is maybe where we're going? Do you think that they may be us in the future, maybe coming from a different dimension? Where do you think the origin of the species that you've had contact with resides?
That I'm not totally sure. I'm not even going to make guesses on that. But I got lost too.
No, it's all right.
This happened last time we talked.
No, it happens more frequently than I'm willing to admit, but that's okay. You know what I mean? It makes for engaging experiences nonetheless here.
I wanted to say that I know this is maybe getting off a little bit off of your question, but I want to reiterate and say that on one occasion that I was shown like banquet-sized tables, like rows of them, and there was like small boxes, like 12 to 18 inches long, and about 10 inches wide, 8-10 inches wide, with beings inside of them. That I do want to tell you, and that was around the same time as me losing the child, and right before I was shown the little girl.
In these boxes, these beings were there.
They were like little inanimate beings, be it babies or little, but there was no soul to them. There was no life.
Just a
per
shell.
Se.
Did it seem like it was alive though? Biologically, did it seem like it was? No, it didn't. It just suspended animation.
No, but that was to my right, and I was it was in a dim lit room, huge. But to my left, there was like, I want to say 3 or 4 vats, really huge and tall, with beings in them at different growth levels, I want to say. Now, whether they were humans, whether they were hybrids, that I don't know. But they were pretty big compared to me. I'm 5'3", but they were really big compared to what humans would be, I would say. So whether that's their hybrids or whether that's them remaking them, I can't say. But I did want to say that.
Why do you think you were maybe shown this scene, and been able to recall this today enough to talk about it? What do you think the purpose? Again, this may just be opinion. You may not know the answer as to why you were shown.
Yeah,
this image,
I don't, other than maybe just because of the fact that I lost a child. Or were they showing me other shells that the other bodies that the babies are being put into, or what? But there was boxes, and there were tables with just filled with boxes of these things. Why I was shown, I can't really say. I can only hypothesize on why.
Sure. But this also reminds me of what people had claimed was happening down in Dulce, New Mexico, with that base, levels upon levels upon levels. And each one of these, as you went down, got further in depth to the biological experiments. And there were purportedly some very horrific hell-like floors. Right. That people would have to work in, and of course there were others experiencing it from the other end. I certainly don't doubt that this is a part of what's going on. I mean, we've seen it in other places, and we've heard it in other stories. Very quickly, Mysteria Dragonheart, Misty, thank you so much for your $1.49 super sticker. Appreciate you. And of course, Mr. Big Feet, good to see you, brother. Thank you for your $1.99 super sticker. Very, very much appreciate you guys supporting the channel the way that you do. Just love seeing you get the time to come through and catch a live show. All right.
As
Well,
far as the vats, hun, as far as the big vats, of the green yellow liquid and the being in it, that was the first time that I had ever seen. I had never heard of anything like that before, prior. So that was new to me, and it wasn't until after the fact when I started to do a lot of more research and reading
mhm.
of things like this, which obviously definitely piqued my interest even more. Um, that's when I started reading about, people have seen these things. So yeah, they exist. They really do.
It's hard to find conviction stronger outside of that type of experience wherein you see something, you have a recollection of something within an event, still can't put it together exactly what it is, but then something else comes along and your understanding broadens, and next thing you know, you make a corroboration like, oh, wow, I knew what that was before I knew
It's
what it was.
confirmation. Yeah.
It's certainly confirmation, and I've actually had a lot of that happen to me in way of the Montauk Project and my experiences with that. So I can certainly relate to you when it comes to this. And when that happens, and you put those two things together, like, oh my God, there's something here. Wow, I always knew
Yeah.
it, but here's the proof in front of
They're
me.
like
Here's
triggers.
certainly, it's just like a trigger,
Yep.
something opening you right up to that information, and again, recollecting what's deep
Hmm.
within our subconscious, which is our right to remember. We just have to have the capacity to access it. I think, for reasons untold, we've lost that ability to do it immediately and now have to put a little more effort into the work. But you
We're
know what?
not always going to recall everything. We're only going to be able to
No.
recall what we're allowed to recall because easily our minds can be wiped.
This is very true. And again, it goes within the contract. They're not going to put you on such a life path that what's going on now may disrupt entirely what you have going on in the way of your physical path. But there are certain circumstances where somebody's been so impacted or affected by an interaction or abduction that they carry it with them the whole lives, and it becomes something more negative for them, regardless of what the experience actually was, sinking into this question, the abyss of the unknown, not knowing
Hmm.
why or how or who else has gone through something similar. But, again, we come back to the whole idea that disclosure may come from the person. It'd be interpersonal and not something given to us by the government as an official statement. And with you, Kim, and your fantastic, fascinating stories, actually, is the multiple anecdotes here. Um, Again, I really think it's very important for us to be listening to folks like yourself, and I give all of my heart to you in way of the bravery that you have to come out and talk about this. Um, even for you to touch upon some of the aspects that we need to when it comes to your experience is very, very commendable, and I want to make that very well acknowledged. And I thank you so much for doing what you're doing. Now, we're getting close here to the end of the show, but before we go, I want to let you guys know that you can find and contact Kimberly O'Connor through her Facebook group below. She puts out some fantastic writing, and she does some pretty cool insights that she has. And of course, you are more than welcome to comment on those and add your own to what she puts up. But Kim, in your own words, if you don't mind telling us where we can find you, that would be awesome.
I have a group called Not So Paranormal, and we talk about anything and everything under the paranormal label of, umbrella of the paranormal. Uh, Everything should be looked at with an open mind and not closed, and not think that your experiences or experience is better or different than, better or uh, more real than somebody else's. I just came across this today, um, where somebody thought that, something, people's story was insane, yet he has his own. That kind of throws a question like, really? How can you put claim to yours and not, appreciate somebody else's or acknowledge somebody else, also has a truth to tell as well?
Yes. 100%. And I do encourage every one of you to go and, again, check out her Facebook page and, of course, all of her peripheral work. And don't miss her, along with myself, Damien, Ralph, Wild Trees, Terry. Who the hell else we got? Bring the whole family. What the hell? Bring the whole family. Come on over to
Right.
Black Lotus
Everybody's
Productions.
welcome.
There's room for everybody. We can stick them all on the screen. Eventually people are going to have to start sharing screens, but you know what? That's fine. We still get it done. Come and check her out over there. Always has something incredible to say and adds quite a bit of information when it comes to these broadcasts. Kim, I want to thank you so much for coming on the show. Of course, I'd like to stick around to say my proper goodbyes off camera. If you have to go, I understand that. Otherwise, I'll be seeing you in just a moment.
Thank you for having me. I'm humbled.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Folks, I hope you enjoyed tonight's show. I understand that the subject matter that we needed to cover had a little bit more gravity than some of the other shows, perhaps, or at least in what we talk about casually. Again, just to reiterate what I had mentioned in the beginning of the broadcast, I do think this is a topic that we really need to continue to revisit. It will shed a bit of light on our connection and possibly our relationship with these beings. And again, as we continue to talk about this, the stories compile, and we eventually have a mountain of what? Something that's not true? I mean, come on now. I mean, do we have to build an entire empire out of every one of these stories and then find that running theme that creates the thread that stitches it all together? I mean, it's there in front of us, folks. Use the logical deduction to come to your answer and conclusion when it comes to some of these subjects. Again, I really want to thank Kimberly for what she's done. There are so many out there who are still sitting in fear or believe something in way of reprisal will occur if they speak out, not realizing that we are now in an open forum. We can talk about this at least to the certain degree that YouTube allows us, but in the very same breath of the word, something like this, I'm well aware that we're probably going to be demonetized tonight for this show. I am okay with that because I think this subject matter needs to be out there, needs to be spoken about, and we need to continue to revisit it until we have something more solid and concrete in front of us in way of anything conclusory. So, with that being said, folks, let's get some music going here. I do trust that all of you have had a safe and happy holiday so far. Of course, as I mentioned, we have the New Year coming up. I hate to tell you, all of those who very much enjoy your football and have been following that for years, I understand that John Madden passed away today at the age of 65. So, not being so much into sports, even though I grew up playing sports and, certainly enjoyed the games and trading cards and all that, I know who John Madden was. So I'm not too ignorant on that. And, of course, that is quite a big loss for you guys, and I do apologize that this has been the case. But we're seeing a lot of these folks drop off these days, and, I'm not going to say the big word because I don't believe it's always that. It's just all thrown under that umbrella, but that's as political as we'll get for now. We've already got enough in front of us. All right, folks, listen, we'll be back next week. Not going to tell you who's coming, but you can be sure that there will be at least 2 guests, as long as things work out the way I've been talking, and this will be another exciting show. Of course, Goof On is on at 9 o'clock Eastern Time. He goes on just before Dark Hour at 11 o'clock Eastern Time, and if you guys can keep your red, wide eyes up, you'll be very delighted to see whatever Third Phase of Moon puts out, and, of course, keep your eyes out for that. They always do fantastic work. They released an end cap show, I think it was last night, and it was just about 4 hours. Fantastic. Brew yourself a cup of coffee, kick back, snuggle up with your significant other, and enjoy some of these shows, guys. We're doing this for you. And for me. But mostly for you. All right, guys. Until next time, stay vigilant, stay curious, and, of course, stay steadfast in this ever nebulous field that we all traverse. Well, look at this. Hey, Misty. She says, wishing you a safe, happy, healthy, and salubrious 2022. Haven't heard that word for a little while. Good callback. Thank you so much, Misty, and all of my super chatters tonight. Thank you, moderators. You do a fantastic job. I see what you guys do there. You guys are awesome. Every one of you that's joined us this evening, thank you so much for making DarkHour Paranormal what it is. Sure, we can have the content, but without you, what are we doing? Thank you so much. We will see you next time on Dark Hour Paranormal. Have a happy new year, guys. Ciao. Oh yeah, that's the intro, isn't it? Oh well, enjoy that. At the same time, I forgot to let you guys know that we are going to be holding a very special show over at GoofOn on New Year's Eve. And you will see many of the faces that you see on these channels out visiting with Richie G. And we're going to have a fantastic time. Guys, don't miss this. Once again, GoofOn, New Year's Eve. Be there. Or be somewhere else. But you're missing everything. So be there.